So I got a question. When's the last time you've heard of a mass shooting at, say, a pawn shop, or, say, a gun store, a gun range, or a police headquarters, places where people are known to have guns? Probably never. I've never heard of a mass shooting at a place where guns are known to be prevalent. Now, on the flip side, you hear about mass shootings in gun-free school zones. Not necessarily gun-free school zones, but gun-free zones all the time. And there's a reason for that. Because these cowards who prey upon innocents don't want armed resistance. They're brave enough to go in there and kill the sheep, people who are unarmed, knowing that they're defenseless. But like this little pussy in Texas, that little punk-ass Texas school shooter, as soon as he was met with some armed resistance, his courage went out the window. He didn't even have the courage to kill himself, which he should have just done in the first place. Instead of killing all them innocent people, he should have just taken himself out of the gene pool, done us all a favor. You know, I don't support gun-free zones. Personally, when I see one of them signs that says that they don't permit weapons in there, like movie theaters, or a great one is one of the most likely places, like a bank or one of them check cashing places where you're going to be getting a lot of cash. That's when you're most vulnerable. And you want to take away my right to defend myself while in those places? Yeah, I don't think so. I concealed carry for a reason, and you don't need to know whether I'm carrying or not. What was the other thing I wanted to talk about here? You know, I was talking to, let me back up. Some people seem to think that the only people who should be able to carry a firearm on a regular basis are police officers, because they are adequately trained. These are the same people that whine and cry that there's too many police shootings and that they need more training. You know, and I, don't get me wrong, I have the utmost respect for law enforcement officials. My oldest son is a law enforcement official as well. All that aside, they're not as trained as you might think. The average police officer seldom has to even fire his weapon, seldom even has to draw his weapon, much less put it into service. Um, it's real funny because a couple of weeks ago, I had an encounter with some police officers. I won't go into the details about it, but after the situation was resolved, I was having a little chat with one of them, and I asked him what type of self-defense ammunition he would recommend, and all he could say was hollow points. And I asked him, I said, well, I mean, like, what brand? What does your agency use? And he didn't know. So I got to talk to him, and I was like, well, what do you think about Spear Gold Dot or Critical Duty, or you know, say this big grip round, or you know, Federal HST, Hydroshocks? He was completely clueless. All he could say was, the more it costs, the better it must be. And I was just like, I was kind of blown away. And you know, as we got to talking more about firearms in general and stuff. Because then I was asking them, well, are you guys still using 40 Smith and Wesson, or have you guys switched to 9mm? You know, what does your agency use? And he says, oh, we just use whatever. Sometimes 9, sometimes 40, sometimes 45. And you know, he didn't seem to know much about guns in general. And you know, I think I may have brought this up before, but I had another encounter last year sometime, and the female police officer, cute little thing, just adorable. Um, she was probably barely out of the academy too, but she was clueless about firearms. You know, she had asked me, you know, where my firearm was located, and I said, well, it's on my person at 4 o'clock. And she was like, well, what does the time have to do with it? And I was just kind of dumbfounded. And, you know, there came a point where her and another officer had to secure my firearm because she felt unsafe for some reason, even though I'm a law-abiding citizen that was legally carried. Um, anyways, when they returned my firearm to me, she said, I'm sorry, we had to take your gun apart. And I looked at her and I said, what do you mean take it apart? Do you mean you had to field strip it or put it in condition 4? And she was clueless once again. And the other officer at that point was like, we put it in condition 4. He knew what was going on at that point. He asked me if I was military, and I told him, no, I'm not military. I'm just a firearms enthusiast. But my point here is, you know, a lot of people think that law enforcement is the end all be all of protection. And the fact of the matter is they don't have as much training in firearms as you might think. Yes, of course they're required to qualify on the range with their sidearm, but a lot of private individuals such as myself have a passion for this sort of thing, and we get a lot of knowledge, we do a lot of research, and we spend our own money and time to get further training. A lot of times more training than police officers have. Um, Now, I'm not saying I'm any better than a police officer, but yeah, I've had 3 years of martial arts training, on top of a lifetime of firearms training. I've been firing guns since I was 12 years old or so. You know, my father, who was a Marine Raider, was very passionate that, you know, I learned about firearms, and he instilled that on me at a young age, and it's something that stuck with me ever since. Um, but the point is a lot of us have more training than your average police officer. Most police officers, their training consists of how to file a proper report, um, how to deal with people in a PC culture, and you know, the the police of today are a lot different than they were, say, 15, 20 years ago. Uh, some people might say yes, they're more militarized. Yeah, I think they've been more politicized than anything. And for those who say that they're more militarized, there's a reason for that, because there's a need for it. In this day and age when we have things like people crashing planes into buildings and people, you know, shooting up schools, you need that sort of thing. You need a police force that's prepared to react to something like that. And, you know, they want to make sure that they go home at the end of the day to their loved ones. And in order to do that, sometimes you need to go in and full body armor with AR-15s. You know, that's just the world we live in. Um, But the whole thing about the gun-free school zones, what part of shall not be infringed do they not get? It very clearly says in the Second Amendment that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. What's not clear about that? I don't understand. That according to my interpretation of that is I should be able to carry a firearm wherever I want, whenever I want, and however I want. That shall not be infringed. Um, anyways, that's just my take on it, and this whole gun control issue is really getting ridiculous. Um, something needs to be done, though. Of course, we got firearms that are getting into the wrong hands, and you know, let's talk about that for a minute too, because this kid in Texas, okay, he didn't own the firearms, but they were purchased legally by his father. Now, whether the father failed to secure his firearms properly or regularly let his child have access to his firearms, I don't know, but the bottom line is they weren't this kid's firearms, and therefore he didn't legally possess them. Now, on a different note of that, if let's just say by some stroke of genius or luck they managed to enact another one of those assault rifle bans and say the AR-15 is no longer legal and you can't buy them anymore, that it's not legal to buy them anymore. Do you think for 1 minute that somebody who is planning to go out and murder people is going to say, oh, I can't legally buy an AR-15, so I guess I won't illegally buy it, because that would just be wrong. Fuck no. Criminals don't care about laws. That's what makes them criminals. Come on. The only people you're hurting by enacting something like that are law-abiding citizens, and in a lot of cases you'll turn everyday law-abiding citizens into criminals overnight. And then you get shit like Ruby Ridge and what happened on Mount Carmel. People are only going to take so much, and when you do infringe on those rights, some people might just decide to infringe back with lead. Anyways, that's my take on it all. Thanks for watching, and please give us a like and subscribe.